Hi, this is Brian Pasch, and welcome to another exciting podcast interview today. It's so great to have longtime friend Hunter Swift on today's podcast. He is the voice between the dealer and a new company as the VP of Marketing for BizzyCar. So today, we're going to dive in, see what Hunter's up to. Let's learn about how BizzyCar is filling an important gap for dealers in the area of fixed operations. We've had so many people on variable ops. So, hey, I'm evolving this podcast to help all departments of the dealership. And there's no better person to bring on as we push into fixed ops than Hunter. So, Hunter, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, BizzyCar had an interesting evolution. Let's start from the beginning. When the company was first formed, what was it focused on?
Yeah, so our company is actually built by a dealer. So our CEO, Ryan Maher, is a third generation car dealer out of St. Charles Automotive Group outside of St. Louis, Missouri. And he struggled just like every single dealer and found a need and said, hey, this doesn't exist. Let's go out and create a product. And he was able to create BizzyCar. And I think when we first came out, we realized that there were a lot of recalls. One in four vehicles have open recall. Last year, there was 27 million vehicles that were affected with a recall. And recalls is, a huge problem. It affects the vehicle reliability and the safety. And so he saw this great opportunity to say, hey, I have a way to reach out to these customers. And as you mentioned, our company and our product evolving, I think initially we looked at our goal of just helping complete more recalls. But what we've ended up finding out that dealers don't really have a recall problem. They have a retention problem, and they're trying to bring customers in, especially with, the slow sales that are probably going to come up with the auto tariffs and things like that. There's more reliance on trying to bring customers in. And, we have compliance issues in regards to how we can reach out to customers. We have data issues in regards to finding the right customer. And then we have all this competition trying to figure out, how do we, beat local mechanics and Jiffy Lubes. And so this was the problem that kind of was at hand. And what we realized is there needed to be a better way. And so we created BizzyCar. And at its core, we help set appointments for people to come in with recalls. Now, managing recalls isn't new. A lot of dealerships, as well as, our owner, was using traditional mail. They had calling.
DDC,
everything, right? And so what we realized is, one, mail has a low conversion rate. It's costly in the sense of, by the time you add postage and everything, it might be $2 to $3 of postage. And surprisingly, dealers are sending out thousands of mailers, and then they all come back with that little yellow sticker that says they don't, live there anymore, and no one goes and updates the CRM. And so every month they continue to send out mail to people who don't own these vehicles. And it's just a very low conversion rate, or you have to trick the customer into thinking it's a bill or a credit card and offer, a $50 discount. And when you're thinking about a $200 to $300 RO and giving away $50, like that's a lot of revenue. And so mail really hasn't solved this problem, but the number one frustration that people have with mail is actually parts availability. Because you have people that are notified of these recalls. They come in.
That's right. They call in and then they can't get it done.
Yeah. And so they're in your drive unannounced. And then you say, sorry, we don't have the part. And so although they're trying to do a good deed of notifying them of the recall, because of the process or the archaic technology or what have you, it creates a negative experience. And then, as you mentioned, BDCs don't like making phone calls, especially reaching out to people. Like customers don't like to be, answer calls unsolicited. And so it's really difficult. And then if you look at the traditional ways that people are usually marketing to customers, either mail or by text, you have a lot of compliance issues with spam and TCPA and things like that. And so what we've been able to identify is recalls actually has an exemption. And so we can actually reach out to people without an opt-in or an opt-out, because the FTC has proven that, or allowed us an exemption to say that safety trumps privacy. So So what we're doing is we're leveraging recalls as a way to reach out to these customers. And instead of traditional methods like mail or phone calls, we do it through texting, which has a high open rate. And then we incorporate artificial intelligence to interact with these customers and set the appointment.
So That's a lot to unpack. So let me make a few comments to the dealers who are listening in. Hunter brings up an amazing point about direct mail. And I'm just going to use an example of data that we shared at the Modern Retailing Conference in 2024. We did a data hygiene project with the Morgan Auto Group, and over 40% of the transactions in the DMS over the last 7 years for Morgan, over 40% were no longer owned by that consumer. So you have to understand that since the DMS is a transactional record of time past, the DMSs aren't being updated. So any outreach you're doing for recalls by default, unless this transaction happened within the last year and you maybe have a 5 or 6% data degradation, it's a huge waste of time. So mail costs go up. Cell phone numbers, though, don't change very often. Just think of your own, personal cell. And so today, that companies can fill in missing cell phone data or email data using data pending tools. CDPs, I think, Hunter, are going to be a boom for you because you can pull now in clean data, use your texting platform with AI to connect. I also want to hit up with your realization that you've become a retention tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is so critical, and we're going to get into what that success rate looks like. But dealers need a reason to communicate with their customers. Now, there's a lot of benefits. As soon as you have another transaction, you have another 18 months of permissible use to reach out to customers, right? There's a limit to the transaction and how many times and how long you can contact. So you reset the clock on communication. You have an opportunity to have a new conversation about trade-in, equity, what the car is worth. But you have to get in touch with the customer. So, Hunter, I love texting. I love the fact that recall safety is a priority. So if the dealer sold that car to a person, they can reach out. What does that connect rate or engagement rate look like? Meaning dealers who did it the old way, like let me send out dirty mail from my DMS, or let me send out dirty emails from my DMS. What is the delta in revenue that you've seen with dealers?
Yeah. So, I mean, first off, I mentioned about mail. No one is reaching out to the dealer saying, "Hey, I don't own this vehicle anymore. Quit mailing me." The first text message that we get most back from customers is, "I don't own this vehicle anymore." And so we're getting an updated right away that we can then report back to the dealer, and if they wanted to, and actually go through the process and say, "Hey, this, the customer doesn't own these vehicles." Unfortunately, as I mentioned with the corrected address, a lot of dealers aren't updating this, and they should, and it's literally a hole where they're leaking money. But, we're making sure that we're sending it to the right customer. The other thing that we do in regards to our outreach is not only are we trying to find customers within our own database, but we realize that there were vehicles that were for sale at local dealerships in our area that had open recalls as well. And so that's actually how the product initially started. Was Ryan during COVID, when it was slow, was getting pressure from the OEM to complete some recalls, but those customers weren't in his database. So all he did was he put that VIN number into Google. It found a listing for Auto Trader and saw that vehicle was for sale at a dealership across the street. So when sales were slow and people weren't coming in, he picked up the phone, called the dealership across the street and said, "Hey, I'd like to, offer this free repair." And so if you think about all the used car lots and the dealerships that are selling competitor brands, if you're trying to sell one and you could say, "Hey, it was just at the dealership. It just got this repair, recall done." Every time you bring it into service, you're always getting a MPI. So it just helps, right? But it's low-hanging fruit for these dealers. So we're not only just setting appointments for consumers, but we're also setting it for used car lots and other lots, as well as fleet departments. Because a lot of these fleet departments have, let's say, a Ford fleet, they might have air conditioning or transport or delivery that are all using Ford trucks. Well, they might all have recalls, but they don't have time to do all those, bring them into service. So they can bring a mobile truck, or they can do somebody, go to their facility when they're closed and knock off all these repairs. And so, at our core, our goal is, like you mentioned, to create like an at bat for these dealers. And if the dealer maximizes this at bat, right? You mentioned, right? You can sell additional services, you can do MPIs,
Absolutely.
you could do trade appraisals. So that's the key. So usually, like our product is about $1,100 to $1,400 depending on the product, but our average dealer sees about an 8x ROI. Our
Wow.
top dealers see 20 to 30x ROIs. They're the ones that are maximizing this at bat, right? They're not just doing the repair and letting them leave, but they're saying, hey, let's do this. Like simple best practices. Like, I've never left the dentist without a future appointment. But why do we let our service customers leave our dealership without a future set appointment, right? When somebody's in there, making sure that you're doing a trade appraisal on every single vehicle. Like if a dealership starts doing these in this process, they're looking at us as like you're creating all of these great at bats. The number one stat that I love with BizzyCar is our average customer, the last days since last visit is 600 days. So these are lost customers, right? So these
I
are
love this, Hunter, and I want to go back to one thing. I love the fact that for dealers who have CDPs who are looking for a specific AI outreach to generate revenue, this is a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer. But here's the other thing I love. I love the fact that BizzyCar's AI texting can confirm that they own the car, and if they don't, then the CDP can be updated. I mean, data hygiene is so important, right?
yeah,
What does this customer have? I love the fact that you guys have thought about, hey, generating revenue from used car or
yeah,
fleets. I love it because it has to be automated to do it, right? No
yeah.
one is going to look for these opportunities. So, Hunter, when we think about this outreach, what can an average dealer, you know, I know it varies on the
Yeah.
size of the database, right?
Yeah.
But an average store, are they booking another 10, 20, 30?
Yeah. So
You know,
usually
what
on
does it look
average,
like?
yeah. So usually on average, you could say we add about 30 to 50 extra appointments a month. And this 30 to 50 appointments required zero involvement from the dealership. So they didn't have to log into a tool, they didn't have to learn a new tool. All they had to do was just create a positive experience and do the work. And so that's one of the nice things about our product is it's completely independent. And as we kind of talked about this at bat, the reason why recalls is such a great thing is you forget that this is the one thing that dealerships have exclusivity on. Everything else, so oil change, major and minor repair, they can do elsewhere. It's a only thing that has to come back to the dealership. It doesn't cost the consumer any money. So this is your, competing against a $19 oil change, right? Like this is a
Right.
free service, right? And when you start thinking about this opportunity of engaging with these customers, because of the AI, we're not just notifying them that they have a recall. We're not sending a text message with a link to schedule it online, which requires them to take an extra step, which if you go to any X time or online service scheduler, it's actually you can't even set a recall appointment because there's so many, like no one's updating all of the op codes. So
That's right. The
often
opcode spaghetti is a
yeah. So
mess.
they're often setting generic recalls that doesn't allow the dealership to be prepared. It doesn't know what the parts in stock. And so one of the big things that kind of separates us from any other marketing company, because you could have a texting company all of a sudden start sending out text messages or marketing company, right? But the big thing for us, like our secret sauce, is that we get recall data directly from the OEM every single night. This includes TSB, campaign information, as well as parts. So as we're communicating with the customer about their recall, they often have questions like, is it safe? What is it going to take? How long is it going to take for it to be repaired? Is the part in stock? Those are all things that we do to interact with these customers. And we are interacting with these customers, it's a long outreach, right? So as people don't respond, we'll continue to outreach. But once we start interacting with them and our integration with the scheduler, it just like, when can you come in? We set it, they get a notification. We send out text follow-up if they missed the appointment or reminders. And it's just this very simple process. Now, the challenge that we had was a lot of these recalls can be completed via mobile. And there's a lot of really big push with mobile service, especially with Ford. And so we were actually setting mobile appointments for these customers. But if you've ever had anyone come to your house, like a plumber or the cable, when do they usually come?
Yeah. They just say basically stay home and waste your whole day.
Yeah, but sometime between 9 and 5. And so that wasn't working when we were trying to set appointments. And so as we were setting appointments for like 9, 10:30, 12, we needed to make sure that they got there on time. And so we actually created a mobile service app that the mobile technician has that gives them an idea of what their day looks like, what parts they need to have on the part, because obviously we want them to be upselling wipers and filters. But it gives them
Right.
turn-by-turn navigation. It helps them get to the appointment. It notifies the customers en route. We allow interface within the app to do an MPI inspection, photos, videos, notify the customer when it's done, is even mobile payment. And so once they're done, then they get routed to the next appointment. And we have a dashboard for the mobile coordinator who can see all the vehicles in real time. And, there are some other, things that we do in regards to that. But, and it is a standalone product as well. But what we realized was as mobile service was starting to be introduced, the number one question that dealers had was, how do I make this profitable? And
Right.
so if you're just trying to do mobile service and just trying to do oil changes, it's not. Because of the fact that we do recalls, it instantly adds additional line items to these repair orders that now make it more profitable, right?
Love that. I love that because, I have a client in Miami who, prior to COVID, decided to do, mobile pickup. And it totally transformed his business, that his fixed ops absorption is through the roof. So I'm wondering if he ever thought about this because he's a very progressive guy. And yeah, not everyone maybe wants to do mobile servicing. I just love the fact that you can communicate. The text is specific to the recall. You know what parts are needed. So let me ask the question that we really didn't address is when the customer is scheduling the recall service appointment at the dealership, do you have integration with all the major DMSs? So Reynolds and CDK,
Yep.
DealerTrack, Techion. Tell
Yep.
me who you integrate with today.
Yeah, we work with every major DMS and every service scheduler. We have to, right? We have to be able to get access to this data. And so that's a big part of it. Now, the other interesting thing that when we introduced our recall appointment setting process, the number one objection that we'd always get was, well, I already have a process in my store that when they come in, the first thing I do is I check if they have an open recall. And what we realized through intensive study is about 60% of the customers who are notified in the service drive of a recall decline it. And the reason why, one, is it's a manual process that is often overlooked. Second, and the largest one, was expectation, meaning they allotted
Right.
a 2-hour job. They rearrange their schedule. They've got kids they've got to pick up. They get there and they say, hey, you have an open recall. They ask, well, how much longer is it going to take? Oh, an extra hour and a half. Oh, I wasn't planning on it. And then they would decline it. And then the third one was you had people that are notified, but you don't have the part in stock. You can get the part in tomorrow. And now you're asking somebody who set an appointment 7 days ago, who we knew that they were coming in and they had an open recall, instead of actually doing it. So that was like a hurdle that we had to overcome because, people said we had a process in place. And so just recently.
Yeah, but the process wasn't meeting customer expectation. It wasn't efficient. My personal experience, I have a Honda Pilot. I went into the dealership I bought it for, and they're like, there's like 5 or 6 software updates that have to be applied. And I'm like, well, how long that's going to take? And they said anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half. And I said, I got other appointments to go to. I wish someone would have told me, or, can I do these software updates at home? Which at that point I couldn't. You're absolutely right. Setting the expectation, advising the customer to prepare or drop off or get a loaner car just makes so much sense, especially since the vehicle, the parts, and the time required or allocated for the recall is all part of your data set.
Yeah. Yeah. So because of that, we created a new product that we launched this year called Recall Scout. And what it does, it scans the DMS for upcoming appointments that have open recalls, but that line item isn't attached to the RO.
So smart.
So then we incorporate our same texting AI outreach and say, Brian, you're coming in for service on Thursday. We just want to notify you that you have an open recall. And again, because we have all this data, we can integrate, because your first question is going to be, just like you asked, how much longer is it going to be? But by us preemptively letting you know, even if you don't interact with us, we see a 50% increase in accepting it, because now you're aware and you already allotted that time. If they actually interact with us, we can add it to the RO. The advisor doesn't have to do anything. And so the way that we're able to do that is through our DMS and service integration, or service scheduler integration. And so we really kind of wrap the bow on, we're reaching out to people, and then we're reaching out to people who are coming in. And then that's why mobile service was like a good kind of transition, because what if they won't come to us? Well, now we can come to them. Right. And so it expands.
This is well thought out, Hunter, because as you mentioned, you're making existing appointments more profitable and a better customer experience. You're reaching lost customers. You said average of 600 days old. Okay. And for more progressive dealers who say, look, I don't mind managing a fleet of mobile service repair, you're making it easy for them to know how to load the truck each day, where to go, and to maximize revenue. Again, it's about customer experience. And I want to remind dealers that it's through the service drive, I believe, that dealers win on the retention game. And the lifetime value of a customer has a lot to do with their experience in the service drive. I mean, I think of a very famous retailer in New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey, Ray Catena. And people rave about the service experience. In fact, there's a lot of snowbirds, Hunter, that go from New Jersey to Florida. And as part of his customer service experience, he picks up their cars, ships them down to their summer house. I mean, that's awesome. I don't know many car dealers that help snowbirds with their cars, but that's part of the Ray Catena customer experience. Yeah. I love this because I don't like surprises. I really work with a tight calendar. And if you can get me in and out or come to my home and do the recall, man, that's so much better than anything I've heard or experienced before.
Yeah. So, I mean, what you're talking about, convenience, is a really important tenet of what we do. Like, we make it convenient to notify the customer. We make it convenient for them to set the appointment. We make it easy to have a great experience. And, I think mobile is definitely a new progressive thing. Like, Ford dealers are maxed, like they've really got it down and see the value. I think there's like close to 4,000 mobile vans in the country right now. And I've got dealers like BizzyCar customer, Ed Bozard, or Ed Roberts at Bozard Ford. I mean, they're close to 40 vehicles fleet in Florida. And so what he told me was he actually doesn't even look at mobile service as a profit center. It's purely retention. And he says it's close to a 100% CSI, mobile service, because these customers, like I'm busy at work all day, right? I can leave my car in the driveway, have somebody come fix it. Like, how is that not good for me? Most customers are driving around with, notices and service reminders, and they're neglecting it because, as we mentioned at the beginning, right, it's just not convenient. And so by making this convenient for them, this whole process, you're seeing an incredible CSI. The other thing I want to talk about mobile service is, a lot of times, you forget, you want your drive filled with the stuff that you can make the most amount of money at. So why clog it with anything that you can do via mobile, right? So smart. Right. So these dealers who are getting this are realizing that, you can expand your reach. You can go past your PMA. It's a mobile billboard. You're offering great service. And if you can help set these appointments and get them to them without any involvement, then it's just a win-win all the way around. And that's
Hunter, I just thought something that what you just said. I know a number of dealers who say, man, I'm at max capacity in my service bays, and I'm thinking about adding a second shift, but that creates another whole set of problems. I'm landlocked. I don't have room to expand. I wonder if they really thought what it could be like if they were able to remove, like, take 20% of this low-hanging fruit, which could be done on mobile service. Could that give them the extra bandwidth, the extra profitability to justify an investment in a mobile service fleet. I love everything about this.
And it's crazy because the technology, especially with like the Ford Transit, like those are big. Like I've got dealers that have alignment machines, an oil changing machine. Like they can put a vacuum at the top of the oil so that when they take out the plug, it's not leaking any oil. And they, you know, they're doing tire rotation. They're doing a lot more repairs than you think that you can actually do. They're doing via mobile. But as I mentioned, 60% of recalls can be done via mobile. A lot of them can be done just with a laptop and a plug-in. Like at our dealership, St. Charles Hyundai, they got a Hyundai Tucson, spent $800 to wrap it. And instead of taking their service technicians who are skilled and you want them working on cars, they took an entry-level guy that's good with people, that didn't mind driving, that could complete these recalls. And they're doing about 7 a day. And for Hyundai, one of the issues they had was the 993 recall was the social media one where people could start stealing Hyundais with like a USB or something like that.
Right.
And they were trying to do all these efforts and events to try to get these to come in. But because it was inconvenient, they still weren't getting these things done. And we can set these appointments. And I've got a driver now that this is all he does. And he just drives around. He does this, but it gives us an at-bat. It resets the clock. It allows us to do an inspection that says, hey, I noticed there's something wrong. Let's schedule that appointment to come in. And so when I said, I know you mentioned it, but like just to really hang on this, 600 days since last visit, these are lost customers, right? And so if you can think about just getting that opportunity, like what would you pay? Like when somebody says, well, how many appointments? And you say, oh, 30. Well, 30 is not that important. Well, what if half of those you haven't been in contact with 800 days, 1,000 days? What's the value of that customer?
Yes. No. I think smart operators who are listening today's podcast, some lights are going off, whether it's I'm reaching lost customers without any effort on myself. Number 2, I'm creating a better customer experience when a car comes in that has a open recall. Number 3, I'm potentially removing low pay, fast turnaround, services which can be done on a mobile experience. There's so many revenue opportunities here. I think this will be one of our most listened to podcasts. I know I'm going to be promoting it because especially with all that dealers are faced with profit challenges, retention challenges, this makes complete sense. Hunter, if a dealer wanted to learn more about the platform, what's the website? And is there a general sales email address that can be shared?
Yeah. So our website is just BizzyCar.com. And then if you want to email anyone, you can just do hello@BizzyCar.com. But yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited to be on this podcast and be part of the DMSC event. As you mentioned, most of the time it's variable, but when we can talk about fixed, and this is bigger than just fixed, right? Like this is the retention. This is going to help sell additional cars.
Absolutely.
And then the other thought too, because we did talk about the BDC, think about if I can take this off their plate now, what can they do now? Right.
Love it.
So there's just so much involved in this program. And then we feel good because not only are we helping dealers make more money, but we're making the vehicles that people are driving more safe, right? We're saving lives.
I love it, Hunter. This is a great timing for this product, especially as dealers invest in CDPs, especially as dealers are looking to get communication clocks reset, create engagement, create conversations. This is a perfect way to stimulate conversation and engagement and even reset some data in the CDP. Well, Hunter, thanks for coming on the show. Look forward to DMSC. Thank you for supporting dealer education. The DMSC event in Scottsdale is going to be our largest. It's an amazing location. We'll be in Scottsdale every year going forward. And for the dealers who are listening in, take a moment to go to BizzyCar.com and get information on this platform. And if this is the first time you're listening to one of my podcasts, you should know there are hundreds of interviews with dealership leaders, entrepreneur, tech giants, people who are reinventing automotive retail. So just search for the Brian Pasch podcast and listen in to these great conversations. I thank you for your time. Hunter and I enjoyed the fact that you joined us and look forward to sharing time with you again on a future podcast session. Thanks again.
Thank you.